I am a dirt kicker. I love kicking the dirt. Kicking the dirt is where I get ideas to come true, how initiatives can get started, communities have a place to start. Kicking the dirt is a conversation, a simple conversation actually, no agenda, no purpose, just two people having a chat. I'm also a community guy. I love communities, and I support them and help them and do whatever I can for them whenever and wherever I can. I've also found that communities need dirt kickers, for they are the believers in the value of change. It can be messy, it can be muddy, it's communities after all, but I like kicking the dirt. I always have. Ever since I was a kid playing in the mud with my brothers, one of the things we used to love to do is skip rocks or drop pebbles in the water, watch the ripples radiate out, challenging one another, as brothers do. What I didn't know then was that those challenges were the beginnings of my what-ifs, my what-if rocks. What if I could throw my rock a little further than my brother's? Or what if I could drop the pebble right where my brother landed his? Or what if the ripples from my rocks could make it back to me before they got interrupted? But one of the things we liked the most, and got us excited the most, was when we dropped through all our rocks and made all sorts of ripples. And watching the complex patterns happen that no single rock could make happen. Today, those rocks, those ripples, they are my what-ifs. New ideas, dreams, bumping into one another so that they can become real. I've also learned that to be a good dirt kicker, you have to listen. You need to be in the present. And you can't be worrying about what's going on your cell phone, or where you got to be next, or what I got to say next, or worse, do I really have time to be doing this right now? Because I know that if I invest the time to be a good dirt kicker, good things can happen. Tossing rocks, making ripples, it's exciting. And that excitement creates energy. And that energy leads to engagement. And then all of a sudden you can have momentum. And that's where stuff gets done. I had this client, Paul, built a house for him a few years ago. And he's a detail guy. And as such, he wants to be in on every decision. So we had lots of meetings. And sometimes, after the meeting, we would walk out onto his driveway, we'd drape our arms over the backside of my pickup truck, and we'd kick the dirt. And one of these times, Paul says, "Hey, Steve, what can we do for Booth Bay? How can we make Booth Bay a better destination?" And so we talked about properties that were not doing so well, needed a facelift. And I said, "I know, Paul. Why don't you buy the golf course?" And he goes, "Steve, why would I ever buy a golf course? I would never do that. That is the stupidest idea you've ever had." I get a lot of rocks thrown back at me. So he goes back to Florida, and I move on. But those ripples, they were out there. Because 2.5 months later, I get a text. Paul likes to text. I get a text from Paul, and he says, "Hey, Steve, have you heard that the golf course is going up for auction?" I go, "No, I hadn't heard that." And he goes, "Well, what do you think?" And I texted back to him, and I said, "Well, Paul, I think you ought to get your butt back up here." He did. He bought. And today, 3 years later, we're building a significant destination for Booth Bay, all starting from two guys having a simple chat around the backside of a pickup truck. I have this other client, Steve, in Greenville. We were doing a major renovation for him as he had just moved his family of 9 kids up from Long Island. And as he started to get to know Greenville, he saw possibilities and wanted to do something about it. At the same time, I was involved in a downtown revitalization program in Rangeley. And so one day when we were kicking the dirt in his driveway, he asked me about it, and he said, "What are you doing over there? And more importantly, how are you doing it?" And I said, "It's a challenge, actually. It's a challenge to get people engaged, to get people to listen long enough before they make up their minds. Making some progress, but." And he said, "Well, what would you do for Greenville?" And I thought, well, maybe we'd enhance the area around the Katahdin. And the Katahdin, for those of you who don't know, it's the historic steamship that cruises Moosehead Lake during the summertime. It's got a small museum by it, but it sits at the end of a parking lot. And I thought maybe we could make it a little bit better than that. And so we drew up a couple of plans, one pretty simple and one more complex, had a bigger vision of a destination park. And I showed it to Steve, and he showed it to some other people, and they liked it. They liked the bigger vision. There was only one problem. The Camden National Bank was in the way. And he said, "Steve, what are you going to do? How are we going to deal with that?" I said, "Well, why don't we ask them to move?" So making my way up the chain, I walked into the headquarters or the main branch of the Camden National Bank, and I did just that. I asked them, "Hey, would you guys mind moving your bank to make room for this park? Have you ever tried moving a bank?" I got a quick and flat no. But what if, right? What if we could find a better spot for you? So cruising downtown Greenville, it did not take us long to find another spot, a better spot. It was occupied by a furniture store, and so we walked up to them, we knocked on their door, and asked them, "Hey, would you guys mind selling your place to make room for the bank?" And they said yes, because they saw the greater good it could be for Greenville to have this park. And though it's taken a while, today we have lots of people engaged, excited about the possibilities for Greenville, and other initiatives are happening. Even the bank is excited. All starting from two guys kicking the dirt, asking what if and why not. 10 years ago, I was kicking the dirt in the parking lot after a planning board meeting with a couple of guys. I spend a lot of time in parking lots. And we were talking about economic development in Booth Bay and what we could do about it. And one guy says, "Well, I know, let's start a college." I go, "Well, that sounds like a pretty good idea, but how do you start a college?" And the other guy said, "Well, I know this retired college administrator. I'll go ask him." And he did. And he liked the idea. And so we spent the better part of the next year pulling plans together, engaging people, creating pro formas. We actually got pretty far. But in the end, it just didn't work out. 5 years later, I get a call from a guy named John. And John had heard about our efforts to start a college, and he wanted to talk about starting a charter school. And we talked a lot. And the more we talked, I love the idea of what it could mean for Booth Bay to have this charter school. So once again, pebbles were dropped, ripples were made, we got people engaged, but unfortunately, Those ripples turned to waves, lots of collisions, and the effort failed. But those ripples were launched once again, and they made their way to Harpswell. And today, Harpswell Coastal Academy is going strong, and in fact, we're in the middle of helping them expand their campus and their reach. A long journey for sure, but I love the trek, because you just never know where you're going to end up, what it might lead to, or who you get to kick the dirt with. My father always said, Stephen, the world is a dynamic place. It's always changing. Look for those moments, listen for those moments, and do something with them. And you know, that's what my whole life has been about. My whole business life has been about. Looking for opportunities, listening to other people's possibilities, trying to bring them together by asking what if and why not. Dirt kicker, rock thrower, listener. Isn't it interesting how something so simple can lead to so much? Thank you.